Hi, my name is Charlie Greenbacker. I'm a data scientist at Altamira, and today I'm going to be talking to you about battling drug cartels with big data using Lumify, which is an open source software platform we've built for analysis and visualization of big data. So really, before I get started, is anyone here officially or unofficially affiliated with a drug cartel? Okay, just two of you? All right. Well, my bodyguard's in the back. Now know who you are. Okay, so I want to start by kind of asking you to imagine yourself as an analyst, right? Law enforcement or some other kind of analyst, and you're trying to unravel a criminal network like a drug cartel, an organized crime ring, or a terrorist cell. As you begin to sift through all the evidence that's been collected, what kind of problems do you think you're facing, right? So there's kind of three problems that we have in mind. Information overload. You know, in the age of big data, every organization is just swimming in massive amounts of information. Images, videos, text documents, structured data, all different kinds of stuff. And everybody needs a better way to make sense of all of this, bring it all together and make sense of it. Second thing is collaboration is really hard. So at the same time, most people in organizations find it really difficult to work with their colleagues using the tools that they have right now. You know, we're all familiar with emailing files around, emailing, documents, and how do you manage all that? You know, for developers, we have version control, and that's great, but most people in the world, that is completely foreign to them, and they want to be able to have some kind of way to collaborate and do their work together securely in real time with colleagues no matter where they are. And finally, most of the tools in this space are pretty good, but they're really, really ridiculously expensive, like maybe $10 million per installation. And a lot of organizations don't have budgets like that. So a lot of folks are looking towards open source software to hopefully dramatically lower those costs. So we built Lumify to solve some of these problems. It's a cloud-based analysis and visualization platform for big data. So kind of at an abstract level, what it does is it ingests data, all different kinds of formats, text, documents, images, audio, video, structured data from relational databases, NoSQL stores, whatever, no matter where it is. All that is presented to the user in a really easy-to-use web application, allowing them to perform a variety of analytics and visualizations on that data, all different kinds of things they can do to the data, and then collaborate with colleagues and teams around the world, again, securely and in real time. And best of all, it's completely open source software, soup to nuts, which is great, right? That's why I'm here. So we've got a couple of kind of prototypical user groups in mind as we're developing Lumify. So first of all, obviously, the drug cartel stuff, law enforcement personnel, legal staff can use Lumify to explore criminal networks, uncover hidden connections, and hopefully develop new leads for their investigation. Business analysts, financial analysts, they want to be able to detect fraud, identify insider trading, by analyzing financial data, transaction records, company profiles, SEC filings, all that kind of stuff. Intel analysts, kind of a similar use case, using Lumify to fuse structured and unstructured data together from a variety of sources into some sort of actionable intelligence. And really anyone doing any kind of exploratory or investigatory research, so things like students, scientists, journalists, even genealogists, family historians, can use Lumify to uncover hidden knowledge and discover new insights. So there's a couple of things that all these groups have in common, right? They're not data scientists, they're not statisticians, they're not software engineers. They're regular people, right? They're muggles, okay? They're far more likely to have degrees in journalism, political science, business administration, not computer science, math, statistics, nothing like that. If you imagine if the last math class you took was Algebra 1, sophomore year of high school, and since then, you got a C-, right? Just barely passing, and then you've deliberately avoided anything mathematical or quantitative for the rest of your career. You're probably not going to be interested in hearing about algorithms, eigenvectors, distributional semantics, that kind of thing. These type of analysts, these type of users that we have in mind are, they think in terms of real-world objects, relationships, events, that kind of stuff. So they need tools that are built around just the way they look at the world. So that's kind of just setting the foundation. This is the stack that Lumify is built on. Everything is open source. The boxes in gray are third-party open source. The two blue boxes, or polygons or whatever, are open source that Altamira has built and released. So the whole thing runs on Hadoop. We typically work with Cloudera's distribution just because it's easy, but there's nothing specific to CDH that we use. So you can use Hortonworks, Vanilla, Apache, whatever. All of the data is stored in Accumulo. Accumulo is like HBase, but slower, and security that HBase didn't have pre-version 0.98. So we have a lot of requirements that really require cell-level security, so that's why we're using Accumulo. Once we see more adoption with visibility strings in HBase, we'll probably migrate to HBase, but for now we're using Accumulo. Elasticsearch powers our full text index, and we've even adopted or find a way to essentially enforce Accumulo-style cell-level security in Elasticsearch, essentially by using parent-child documents. I can talk more about that later if you're interested. So Lumify uses kind of a graph database abstraction to look at the data. Riding on top of the data, actually sitting in Accumulo. Originally, we used TitanDB, which is an open source graph database that you can use Accumulo as the backend for. And it's fantastic, but Titan doesn't actually respect the visibility strings in Accumulo that power the cell-level security. So we started going down the road of, well, how do we coerce Titan into doing that? And we were getting down the road of essentially re-implementing Titan entirely. So we threw that out. We built something called Secure Graph, which we don't call a graph database. It's really more of a graph abstraction layer on top of Accumulo. So again, the data sits in Accumulo. Secure Graph is a way of looking at the data that facilitates graph-type manipulation of the data. That's its own project. So Lumify depends on Secure Graph, but Secure Graph does not depend on Lumify. So if you're interested in more in that, it's at securegraph.org. Storm powers our ingestion pipeline. So as data is coming into the system, whether from some sort of user upload or database dump or streaming feed, whatever, it hits the Storm topology, and then depending on what type of data it is, there's a whole bunch of different analytic tools that are going to hit that data and do things to it to extract something, enrich it, index it, that sort of stuff. So these 6 are just kind of a sampling of some of the ones that we use. OpenNLP is an Apache project. We use that for primarily entity extraction, finding names of people, places, and things in the free text of documents that we're ingesting. Claven is actually a tool that I built at a previous job, and I spoke about at a previous iteration of this conference. It's a geoparser, so it takes text, finds the names of places, and figures out what those places mean. So it kind of solves that Springfield problem of which Springfield are they talking about. So text comes in and pins to, you can put on a map, come out. It's an open source alternative to something called Metacarta, if that rings a bell. OpenCV is a computer vision tool. We use that for facial detection. We could theoretically do true facial recognition, but that requires a lot of training data to be able to say, this isn't just a picture of a guy, this is a picture of Charlie. You need a lot of different pictures of me, different haircuts, lighting, angles, that sort of thing. And so usually we're just doing detection. Tesseract is optical character recognition to find text in images. Sphinx is a tool from Carnegie Mellon that does automatic speech recognition. So audio comes in and a transcript of spoken text comes out. And FFmpeg does a bunch of video stuff, and there are several others that we use. And then the whole thing is kind of baked into Lumify. So if you're familiar with graph analysis, this is going to be kind of old hat for you, but this is just kind of glossary of terms to understand what I'm talking about with Lumify. The ontology defines everything in your data model. It's essentially the schema for your data, and it's defining the things that you want to be able to model, the real world things. Lumify works with essentially any, it's completely customizable. Each organization using Lumify can define whatever they want to store in their ontology. And 2 different organizations could have completely different ontologies. Lumify doesn't care. Honey Badger doesn't care. It does what you tell it to do. So the ontology is going to define essentially 3 things: entities, relationships, and properties. Entities are the nodes in the graph. They're usually some kind of proper noun, like a person or an organization, but it can be an event. It can be different kinds of things. It can be abstract things. The relationships are the edges or the links or the relationships between the entities in the graph. So like a person can be a leader of a company. A person can work for somebody else or be a sibling of somebody. And then properties are essentially metadata about the entities and relationships. So a person can have a date of birth, a phone number, and even relationships can have properties too, like An employment relationship will have maybe a beginning and an end date, that sort of thing. And then the graph is the collection of all of the instances of everything defined in the ontology. So the ontology defines the entity relationship, kind of the class definition, and then the graph is the collection of all the instances of those things in a running version of Lumify. So I mentioned before cell level security. This is kind of an abstract view. We have two entities here, a person and an organization, both of which have some properties. Everywhere you see a little padlock icon, you can have a separate access control. So the fact that this guy exists, maybe everybody can see it. Maybe the fact, what his date of birth is maybe, you need one access token. You can think of term, unclassified, secret, top secret, but it can be as arbitrary as you want it to be. It can be, me and Nick can see his nationality, right? And somebody else can't. So anywhere you see a padlock icon, you can have it as arbitrary as possible. That sounds really easy, but that is super, super complicated to actually implement and make performant and work, and it's a huge pain. So a lot of what we do in the analysis of the data in Lumify comes down to text analytics. That's what my background is in. I do natural language processing, computational linguistics, that sort of thing. And there's a lot of places that we get text from essentially any data that's ingested into Lumify. And so this is kind of a sampling of that. Starting in the top left, if you have a text document, that's got text. So we'll just pull that out and analyze it. Structured data, spreadsheets, database export, that kind of thing. Those will often have free text fields, so we'll pull those out and analyze them like text. Images go through OCR, so if there's text in the image, that text gets pulled out and we can analyze that. Audio files go through that Sphinx tool to do the speech transcription. That gives us text that we can analyze. And then video, we can actually get up to 3 different text tracks, I guess, from every video file. If there's embedded closed captioning, that's easy to pull that out with a tool called CC Extractor. We go frame by frame through the video, and I think we sample like 1 per second or something like that, and we treat each frame like an image, and we pull, we apply OCR to that to pull text out and then kind of like weave it back together. So any text that's in the image of the video, you can think of like a news report has a chyron scrolling on the bottom, or something in the corner, whatever, that text gets pulled out, we can analyze it. And then we take the audio track from the video file and run that through the speech transcription tool. So often we can get up to 3 forms of text from every video. And then what do we do with the text? Obviously we index it for searching, but we also try to do some enrichment to it. First we run it through OpenNLP, and that's going to do named entity recognition. So that's going to go through and say, okay, this looks like the name of a person, this looks like the name of an organization, this looks like the name of a location, but it doesn't really have any deeper semantics beyond that. It doesn't know the difference between this George Bush and this George Bush, right? It doesn't know that Barack Obama, President Obama, and Mr. Obama all referring to the same person, that kind of thing, which is difficult. And specifically for locations, we can go that step further, though. So we can figure out, okay, this Springfield is talking about Springfield, Massachusetts. This Springfield is talking about Springfield, Illinois, using a tool called Claven that does that geoparsing, the geo-entity resolution, to figure all that out. We get 3 different sources of geospatial data in Lumify, structured, semi-structured, and unstructured. So structured data is the easy stuff. That's when people are talking about geospatial data, they're usually talking about structured data that they're working with. That's data that has some sort of native geotagging with it, right? So if you pull some tweets for Twitter, they might be geotagged by the GPS on that user's device, so there'll be some kind of lat long or something on there. So, or some other coordinate information from a sensor somewhere, whatever. So you've got some native geo tag in that data. That's really easy to use right out of the box. You might have to convert the coordinate forms, but no big deal. Semi-structured and unstructured require a bit more work. So an example of semi-structured geospatial data would be like a spreadsheet that has an address field, right? That just has someone's mailing address. So you have to do something to turn that into a lat long, or maybe it's a multi-part field. Maybe it's city, state, and country, and you have to figure that out and turn that into something that you can put on a map and cross-reference with other stuff. So we can use Claven for that. And then the unstructured data is just text, right? So places mentioned in a document, and that's where Claven really comes in handy to figure out, okay, which Springfield are they talking about? Which London are they talking about? Are they talking about Paris, France, Paris, Texas, that sort of thing? So we use all 3 of them. So I hate slides, so I'm going to go and do a demo for pretty much the rest of the talk. And don't sit on the microphone. OK. So, and of course, OK, we see that? OK, so this is running on a public AWS instance. After the talk, anybody who wants to can go to this. It's try.lumify.io. Or you can just go to lumify.io and it'll have instructions on what to do. We don't want to bother users to have to sign up for an account or whatever, so we just use OAuth. So if you have a Twitter or a Google account, you can use that to log in. And this is what a user first sees when they log into the application. This big white canvas in the middle is called the workspace. I'm actually going to, let me increase the font size on this. OK, does that look a little better? OK. So this is the workspace. This is where users are going to interact with and visualize their data. Along the left-hand side, there's a bunch of different tools, different ways for them to interact with the data. Maybe something you might want to do to start is just do a wildcard search in the search bar. The team hates when I do this because it really taxes the server. And it'll come back in a second. So the data that's in this, loaded in this instance of Lumify, going back to the title of Drug Cartels, it's primarily about the Sinaloa cartel, which is the largest Mexican drug cartel. All of the data in here is completely unclassified. There's no sensitivity with it. It was taken all from open sources, primarily state.gov, treasury.gov. All these different government agencies publish all this information whenever anyone gets designated under the Drug Kingpin Act, so that local law enforcement and media can, like a help want, or not help wanted, America's Most Wanted kind of thing. And then there's also a bunch of media reports. Everything in here is stuff that we have the right to redistribute. So it's like Voice of America and Wiki News, that kind of thing. There's a mix of unstructured documents, images, video. There's even structured data. So like Treasury and State, they'll put out company profiles, known affiliates, essentially CSV files with information about these guys, about their organizations, that kind of thing. So clicking on this filter by concept button shows me all the different types of things that are currently available in the system. All the way down to the bottom under raw, those are the files as they were ingested. So there's some documents, there's images. The structured stuff gets lumped into documents as well. Everything else above is some sort of semantic entity that was extracted and resolved either completely automatically by the system or by an analyst going in and doing something manually, right? So what I like to say is that machines are great here because they can handle a scale far beyond whatever any group of people can do. So they're broad, but they're shallow, right? They're nowhere near as smart as a person to be able to go in and find very delicate, intricate relationships between things and figure that out. But they can do millions and millions of documents an hour. No human's going to do that. And the analysts are great because they're nowhere near as broad as what the machine can do, but they're very, very deep in the type of analysis that they can do. So when you get those kind of working together, you get the best of both worlds. So maybe I'm interested in, maybe I want to see, what are all the people in the system. Maybe I want to see. Internet's not super fast here. There's only 1,000 people trying to check their email, right? I can see all of the companies in here, that kind of thing. But maybe I want to kind of narrow in on a specific hypothetical analysis. Maybe I'm interested in a person who goes by the nickname of El Mayo. So I'll do a search for Mayo, and I can say, well, show me everything. And maybe I'm not interested in everything. Maybe I'm interested in specifically people with that nickname. So I'll filter down to people, and there's one individual like that. And you'll notice through this talk that just like mafia bosses, they have these nicknames like El Mayo and El Chapo and whatever, which is kind of how I remember who they are. This resolution is really screwing me up. Let me fix it again. Sorry, bear with me. Okay. Hopefully, can you folks in the back still kind of make some of that text out? Kind of. I'll read out the important parts to you. Okay, so when I click on this guy in the search results, I get this kind of baseball card profile of this individual. I get all the metadata that I have about him. I see the relationships that he has, the different people he's connected to, the documents that he's mentioned in. If I click on this audit button, I can see every single thing that's ever been done to this entity, either by a user or a system process. So that's kind of like the Wikipedia edit history. You know, organizations really like that for provenance and data lineage and auditing, that kind of thing. If I want to make this guy the center of my investigation, I can drag and drop him onto my workspace here, and this is going to be the beginning of this link analysis that I can perform. If I right-click on him, I can say Add Related Organizations, and Lumify is going to display all of the organizations that it knows that this guy has a connection to. Right now, it only knows that he's directly connected to the Sinaloa cartel. That's not surprising. These guys create all these layers of obfuscation, you know, just like the mafia, to hide the money laundering and other illicit activity. So I'll go back and say, okay, show me all the related people. And then it dumps a bunch of people onto my graph here. If I click on any one of these individuals, again, I bring up kind of their profile. If there's a picture available, I get that. With this guy, notice that he doesn't just work for El Maya, who's actually the #2 at Sinaloa. He works for El Chapo, who is the head of Sinaloa, who's actually recently apprehended by the Mexican authorities. I can drag and drop him onto the link analysis graph view here directly from there. And then Lumify will, again, draw any connections that it knows about between that guy and anyone else in the graph. If I click on this woman, bring up her chart here, and it says that she actually runs 19 different companies. Isn't that a little interesting? Maybe I want to dig a little deeper there. Maybe there's something going on there, so I'll say Add Related Organizations, and just for good measure, I'll say Add Related People as well. So now I've got this kind of, you know, subgraph that I'm building out. There's this whole back end of where all this data is coming from. I'm just looking at different pieces, different facets of it at any one time in the browser. But maybe now I can go and I can start asking some questions about this data. Maybe I want to know, for example, if El Chapo or how he's connected to this company. So I'll draw a line between them, and Lumify is asking me, are you trying to create a connection or find a connection? Right now we're trying to find one, and it says it can't find any up to 2 hops. I can increase the number of hops if I want. If you're familiar with graph theory, the higher number of hops you go, the more computationally complex it becomes, because we're not just searching what we're seeing, we're searching all of the entities in the back end. Lumify said it found a connection through an entity that's not on the graph, so I can go ahead and add that. But it turns out it's this document that mentions all of these different entities, and that's not the kind of relationship I'm interested in, so I'll kick that out. But maybe a new piece of information comes along and says, okay, you know, this guy that we were just looking at a second ago, he actually works for that company. So I'll draw a line between them, and now I am going to create a connection. This drop-down list is, you know, the type of relationship that we're creating here. This is populated by the ontology, so the ontology says, okay, these are all the valid relationship types between a person and a company, and we'll just pick works at. We always have to provide some sort of justification to support this relationship, so it's not just Charlie making it up. It's like, I found it somewhere or whatever. Since we're in demo mode, I can just type demo, but I'll show you something more interesting in a second. And then visibility is, you know, do I want this to be public within my organization, or do I want it to be private just to me, or, you know, am I part of a task force or a team that's focused on this group, so we want to keep it sensitive to them. So that's where we could control that here, but for now we'll just leave it public. And once I hit connect, Lumify goes in and adds that relationship here. So I just went in now, I added something to the data. You may have noticed once I hit connect, this little badge lit up in the lower left-hand corner. So, you know, it's best to kind of think in terms of version control. There's a master repository, if you will, the kind of central authoritative copy of the data that is there, that everyone has access to. When a user is in their workspace and making changes, all those changes are sandboxed and they're local to them unless and until they publish them back to the main copy or you know, essentially commit them. So if I click on this, I'm kind of pulling up a diff panel that shows me, okay, these are the changes that you've made to the data that aren't available to anyone else in the system yet. So if someone else came in and built this graph, they wouldn't see that link that I just made because that's just local to me now until I commit that. But now if I go in and I ask that same question from before, how is El Chapo connected to that company, find path, it's going to find that connection through the link that I just made. So this is really, really basic link analysis stuff. You know, one analyst or one piece of information tells us A is connected to B, someone else tells us B is connected to C, and then we come along and ask the question of the system, how is A connected to C, and it provides that for us. We can also ask questions about this graph as a whole. We can either drag a box around everything, but I hate doing that. I like keyboard shortcuts. We even have a keyboard shortcut to show us all the keyboard shortcuts. So I'll just do Control A. I've got everything selected, and now I've got some high-level information about the objects on my graph. So there's these histogram bars that kind of tell us, okay, there's 33 companies, or 33 people, 19 companies, and when I roll over that histogram bar, those things pulsate on the graph just to kind of visually draw my attention to them. I can click on them, and now I've down selected, so not only the companies are selected on the graph. If there was more depth to the ontology, maybe we broke down company into LLCs and multinational corporations and nonprofits, whatever. You could keep drilling down there as deep as you want. And I've also got this list here that I can walk through the profiles of all of these entities without actually changing my selection. I have a lot of control over how everything is laid out. So it's not just, this was kind of added happenstance, but I can go in and change that layout. Go and make it a circle, and maybe that helps me see something that I otherwise would have missed, and I can tease these things out and start to see connections. I can do hierarchical. I can do force-directed, which kind of uses a little simulated physics engine. That's kind of funky. All of this is powered by Cytoscape. It's an open source kind of link or graph visualization thing. If I click on the graph button again, I can switch to 3D mode. This is kind of the Minority Report view, where you can zoom in and out, spin all around, do that kind of stuff. It makes me a little bit motion sick. I myself could never see me personally using it like this, but a lot of people we show this to are like, ooh, that's so cool, right? But before I yak up on the keyboard, I'll switch back to 2D mode. And my personal OCD requires things to be laid out nice and evenly and perfectly, so I'll scratch my OCD by using the grid layout. That 3D thing is not Cytoscape. That's a separate thing that we built. And in fact, we're hitting the limits of, not in this demo, but we're running into some limits with the number of things that Cytoscape can display in the browser at any one time. So once we get to a couple hundred nodes with several hundred or a couple thousand edges, Cytoscape really kinds of bog down. So that 3D graph view actually uses WebGL, which has some browser compatibility issues, but allows us to show a lot more things in the browser. So eventually, we're going to dump Cytoscape and replace it with a 2D version of the 3D engine that we built, but whatever. OK, so everything that we've looked at so far has been from structured data, but let's look at some unstructured data as well. If I go back and change this to Chapo and change this to document, this is going to show me all the documents that mention El Chapo. I can click on one of these here. And there's a couple things going on here. Everywhere where you see something that's underlined but not in bold, that's an entity that's been identified by the system, but it doesn't have anything in the knowledge base to kind of link it to. So it thinks, Immigrations and Customs Enforcement is the name of an organization, but it doesn't have an organization with that name in the system to link it to. It was able to do El Paso, that kind of thing. But we can go in and we can help out the system a little bit. So we see this guy mentioned down here, Roberto G. Medina. If I click on that and say resolve, it's going to say, OK, it can't find any matches in the system with that name, so I'll create a new entity. Lumify has pre-selected person because it's doing the entity extraction. I could override that if I wanted to, but person is correct. And I'll resolve that as new. And now Lumify has upgraded that from just being a suspected entity to an actual resolved entity in the system. I can drag that onto my workspace here. It's not going to have any relationships just yet because the only relationship that it has is that this entity was mentioned in that document. And then I see another one here. There's an organization mentioned here. I'll go ahead and create that one as well. Once it comes back. Stop checking your email, everybody. It's pre-selected organization, but I'm actually going to say it's actually a government agency, so it's a more specific type of organization. Click that. Add that to my graph. Again, it doesn't have any connections. Now I'm actually going to create a connection from the text here. I can drag one thing onto the other. And it's going to say, OK, what kind of relationship are you creating? I'll say he's the leader of it. And then for the justification, like I mentioned before, I can just highlight the text here, copy it, paste it in here, and it's going to create a citation that says, OK, this isn't just Charlie making up this relationship. It's getting this specific piece of text in this specific document supports it. And then once I hit connect, it's created the relationship, and then it gets displayed on the graph. If I go back and look at a different document, there's this one here. I can always go and look at the original document, and this was the original PDF as it was ingested by Lumify. I see here that actually it gives me his date of birth, so maybe I want to add that to his profile. So I can copy it, open up that guy's baseball card chart, add a property of his birthday, paste it in here. Lumify will parse the date, reformat it, and then provide that link back to the document that I got it from. So now I've added a birthday for him, and I can click on it, and it says, you know, Charlie just got this moments ago. Here's the exact document it came from. I can click on it. It brings me right to where I found that. And then if I go and do a search, I can search for everything with a birthday before 1950. And it says, okay, there's only 2 guys with a birthday before 1950. That's like being 1,000,000 years old in these drug cartels. They don't last that long, right? They get bumped off or whatever. But if I change it to 1970, I get a bunch of people back, including the guy that I just added a birthday for. So getting a little short on time. There's a bunch of stuff that we do. Let me show some stuff with images. There's a bunch of stuff we do with maps and videos and that kind of thing, but the image stuff looks pretty cool to do. And if anyone wants to help me out with a live demo, if they have their laptop open and have a Google or Twitter account, if you want to go to that website, try.lumify.io, and then I'll use you in like 2 minutes. So this is an image that we ingested. So there's tons of text in this video. So all of that is down here in the OCR output. If you've ever done any OCR stuff, you know that it's not perfect, especially when it's a low resolution image like that. So there's a lot of gobbledygook here, but there are some stuff that I got right. I was able to resolve locations in here. And it's not designed to replace a human actually looking at that text. It's more for indexing and retrieval purposes. And then we run that through the facial detection tool, and then all these person badges are faces that were found in the system. And if we want, we can go in and we can click on one and say that's not just a faceless person, it's actually Joaquin Guzman. And then it'll say, okay, that's the one, resolve. And now I've upgraded that from just a face badge to now it's actually linked to that person. Okay, is anyone logged into the system and wants to be my assistant? Yeah, okay. So what I'm gonna do is, it would be great if you could see her screen, but we've only got one. So I'm actually going to share my workspace with them. So if I go into my spaces, you could have multiple workspaces, click on the settings. It's going to open up the sharing widget in just a second. It's everyone logging into Lumify at once. Okay, what's your name? Emily. Emily, stay me right there? Yep. Are you logged in right now? Shows you as red, but I'll click on that anyway. So now you have view access. So if you're logged into Lumify and you click on that spaces button along the left-hand side, when that opens up, there should be a little thing that says shared with me and maybe default Charlie Greenbacker's workspace. Do you see that? You do? Okay, and if you click on that, you should have the exact same view that I do. It's loading. Okay, it's a wireless mic so I can walk over and take a look. Let's see.
It may have timed me out or something.
Nope, here you go. Okay, so everyone around here can see it. Now, you can click on those. If you try to drag them around or do anything, it won't let you. So like if you try to drag a person and move it somewhere else, it won't let you do that until I go in and I'll give you now edit access. And 1 second for it to check all of we need to fix how it does this. Okay, now I'm going to cross my fingers and give you edit access. So now you should be able to grab that woman, Blanca Margarita, and drag and drop her over to another part of the graph. And it should take about a second or so once you let go. So now she's editing my workspace from her machine. 10 seconds ago, she never used Lumify before. And now she can go in and destroy everything, and I can say, okay, well, that's enough destruction. Again, once that loads up, she can delete things, she can add things. But once I decide that she's had enough fun.
Click fast.
Stop. Okay. Now I can boot her out and She no longer has access to the thing. Now, she may not actually see the exact same view that I have, because maybe we have different accesses, right? Maybe I'm an admin and I can see a different level of stuff. So if there's anything here that she doesn't have the rights to, I don't have to worry about, can I share this workspace with her? Because Lumify and Accumulo are going to enforce that access control. And along the same line, maybe she has a higher access than I do. She could add stuff to my workspace and I won't even see it, because all of my view is coming through what Accumulo and Lumify let me see. So I still have a few minutes left for questions. That's basically it for the talk. Here is all of the contact info. At Greenbacker on Twitter is the best way to get a hold of me. Lumify is just lumify.io, and that has instructions on how to get into the demo. And then I work for Altamira, and that's our website right there. So thanks for listening. And that's a screenshot from right in a different display in Lumify. So there's my all things open contact info, live inside of Lumify. Yes, sir. Question?
I was curious. This is really impressive for analyzing how things put together.
Yep.
What other kinds of analysis can you do with Lumify?
Sure.
Or is this is what it's focused on?
So a lot of it is the link analysis. We do some geospatial stuff too that I didn't have a ton of time to get into, but I can just do something here real quick. Let me go and add all the countries that we have information about, just to show something going on with the map here. So now I added, a bunch of flags onto my workspace. You're like, Charlie, that there's no links here. Sometimes it doesn't make sense to look at your data that way. It makes more sense to look at it geospatially. So if I click on the map, now I've got anything on that graph that had some sort of plottable thing is now available on this map, and it's pretty simple. It's just pins on a map. We can work with any map provider that supports open layers. So typically we'll work with Google Maps because it's really easy. We work with OpenStreetMap a lot, but we could use Esri or whatever. And we're always looking to do more types of analysis, and there's plenty of room left on the toolbar to add new types of analysis. Yes, sir.
So first of all, that stack is ridiculous, and congratulations.
Thank you. It is extremely hard to get up and running.
Yeah.
Most of our mailing list is like, how do I install all of these different things? It's a huge pain in the butt.
So I have a couple of questions.
Sure.
First is the source code available anywhere?
Yep.
What is it licensed?
GitHub, Apache licensed.
Great. Secondly, you didn't talk a lot about data ingestion.
Mm-hmm.
What do you use for scraping the data? Is it all manually curated, or do you have scrapers?
We don't do any of the scraping kind of stuff. So there's a couple different ways data will come into the system. And you can kind of divide it into two main categories. It can be user uploaded stuff. So if I created just a new workspace, and there's that icon in the middle here, just drag and drop stuff on here. That works best with unstructured data. So images, documents, whatever, video files, just upload them here and it'll have a progress bar and it'll do all that. That's really easy. And then you have to publish it back so people can see it. There's also, on the back end, you can hook up different feeds to the system. You can connect it to different databases. That's often custom work to connect it. And the hardest part is usually the mapping of the structure of whatever data you're grabbing it from into the ontology. So if you've got some database that you're connecting to, or even just a spreadsheet that you're importing, if you want to be able to take advantage of all the structure in that data, you need to provide a mapping from the structure of that data format to your ontology, right? So maybe your ontology, a person just has name, but you have it in 2 columns of first name and last name, and you have to say, well, these two things get combined into that property. So there's, it usually takes about 10 or 15 minutes per format, and right now it's just a JSON file that they have to write that mapping in. Eventually we want to have a wizard that's WYSIWYG, and you just do the connection and boom, but yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, sir. No, so it's good that you mentioned blueprints. SecureGraph started by taking blueprints and adding the things that we needed to add, like multi-value properties and that kind of thing. I don't know if we've tried to commit it back. I'm not the main developer on SecureGraph. I know that's been open source, but I don't know if they've tried to submit a pull request or whatever to blueprints. It would probably break some stuff, I would imagine. There's a bunch of things that we want Accumulo to have, and the Accumulo guys don't want Accumulo to have it, because in their mind, Accumulo is done and it's secure. When you add new features to a security product, you don't know if it's secure anymore. So I don't know the answer to that.
Really horrible question.
Sure.
Anybody involved with an open source project, but is there any kind of online user's guide?
There's really bad documentation. There's some videos. There's my old talks on SlideShare. No, basically because we haven't been paid to do that yet. And so if we're doing it for free, we're going to do the fun stuff, right? And nobody likes to be the tech writer or whatever. So eventually we'll get there. And also Lumify is changing so much that we would have to do that. And if we made it too easy, then we couldn't make money in services, right? So. More questions? Yes, sir, right here.
So you talked about using Accumulo for the data security in the data tier, and I know that is a pain in the ass to try to put into the application.
Huge, huge.
Did you go with Shiro? Did you write custom stuff? How did you tie your security stuff to cell-level security in the database?
I can't answer that question. That's not the level in the stack that I really have the most expertise in, but I can get you that answer if you want. Yeah. So there's another one in the back. That's where I can answer questions.
Do you handle languages besides English?
If an engineer is answering that question, no. If a salesperson is answering that question, it's yes. And if it's me answering the question, it's we could, but we haven't. And there would be a list of languages that we could support. So a lot of like the entity extraction and the resolution stuff tend to be not language agnostic, right? So it's very much language specific. With the tools that we use, we're forced to, we could only support the languages that they support. So OpenNLP does English, Spanish, Dutch, and I think Portuguese, or there's one other. Stanford does Chinese and Spanish and German, but Stanford's GPL, so we'd have to do like a GPL bundle with that. There's another open source one that does Arabic. And then for other languages, it would have to be, proprietary tools like NetOwl or Basis that do dozens of languages. Yeah. Any other questions? Sir?
Are there pieces of your stack that you would think would be useful if you have an existing graph that you want to, use some of your cool visualization stuff in there? Yeah, I find out what you're doing.
So, I mean, the approach that I would probably want to take is, depending on what your existing graph looks like, could it be exported into a format that we could read in? Like there's something called like GraphML or something like that we've looked at, which is supposed to be some kind of markup language that interchangeable between graph analysis tools, but there hasn't been much traction. People haven't been using that. It's often Python or Palantir XML or Analyst Notebook files, which are proprietary. And like if you've used Palantir stuff, Palantir's great. The only thing bad about Palantir is that it's not open source and it's really expensive. So the output from Palantir is that PXML file, which is not, it's a lossy representation of what Palantir actually has. So you're not getting exactly what Palantir has access to. But I mean, those are the kind of problems that we often get paid to solve, and how do we pull that stuff in?
Can you import content from websites?
Yeah, so HTML files, anything that Tika can handle.
Directly without having to save each HTML file?
Right now, no. That's usually the way it happens is you pull it down. But you could on the back end, you could hook it up to something like Kapow or Kimono Labs, web scraping tools to pull that out. And they essentially will dump that into a CSV, and we could pull that out. But we use Apache Tika in the ingestion process. So any file format that Tika can handle, we can ingest, plus some other stuff too. Great. Thanks so much.